The Japanese strike on Pearl Harbor left the American Pacific Fleet in ruins, officially plunging the United States into World War II. The unforeseen event also ignited speculation that is still widely debated 8 decades after its occurrence. During the so-called Winds Code incident, American Army and Navy codebreakers monitoring Japanese communications allegedly intercepted a message that hinted towards a Japanese attack. However, the message was supposedly lost amidst thousands of documents received in the months leading to December 7, 1941. To this day, it is still contested if President Franklin Roosevelt's administration failed to protect Pearl Harbor, or if the Winds Code was not a real clue, signaling the devastating attack. The importance of code breaking. All the nations involved in World War I quickly learned the importance of code breaking. Since radio communications were easily intercepted, armies and navies from all over the world began to convert their messages into codes and ciphers that only their own could understand. However, many linguists and mathematicians soon learned to crack foreign messages, and the information they obtained led to victory after victory for several admirals, generals, and political figures. When the hostilities finally ended, many countries kept their code-breaking agencies in case they were necessary to reap the benefits achieved during the war. By then, the United States' main target was Japan, which reigned supreme in the Western Pacific after defeating both China and Russia. It was public knowledge that Japan was in the process of building a fleet to match that of the US, and it had also occupied islands that enabled its fleet to threaten ocean routes leading to the Philippines. The United States was well aware that Japan was its most potentially dangerous naval enemy. In early 1923, American intelligence found a 1918 Japanese naval codebook while rifling through the luggage of a Japanese officer visiting the country. The findings compelled the Navy to create its own code-breaking agency within the Division of Naval Communications, named the Research Desk. Lieutenant Lawrence F. Safford was then chosen as the organization's leader because of his reputation in mechanics and mathematics. After setting up an office with 4 civilians at the main Navy department, one of Safford's first actions was to establish radio intercept stations in the Pacific to obtain more valuable intelligence than ever before. By 1937, the deciphered messages from the research desk began arriving at the White House, revealing critical information about Italy's potential attachment to the German-Japanese Anti-Comintern Pact. This was 6 months before American diplomats began reporting on it. Purple magic. From 1939 to the end of World War II, the Japanese used a Type B cipher machine, codenamed Purple by the United States, to encode top-secret intelligence sent to their ambassadors worldwide. Meanwhile, magic was the code word chosen for American intelligence intercepts of highly classified Japanese military and diplomatic information. The U.S. Army's Signals Intelligence Service and the Navy's Communications Special Unit carried out the magic cryptoanalysis operation, and its success allowed the U.S. to follow the Japanese's route to war, keeping a detailed record of every move and closely watching the Imperial Japanese Navy. In the summer of 1940, the United States began to share their collective intelligence with the British, who had their own secret communication interception with Germany, codenamed Enigma. The cryptanalytic data collected by the Navy's codebreaking group, led by Safford, was continuously sent to several top military leaders within the American government. However, not all of the information gathered through magic was shared with all Army commanders. Incidentally, those left in the dark included the commanding officers at Pearl Harbor, Navy Admiral Husband Kimmel and Army General Walter Short. The Winds Message. By the fall of 1941, the American codebreakers from the Navy and the Army had a clear idea of the Japanese government's modus operandi, and it was clear that Japan was still reluctant to tone down its harsh rhetoric regarding a possible conflict with non-Axis powers. On December 4th, 1941, several American listening posts stationed all over the world were able to decode 2 communications or circulars sent from Tokyo to its Washington, D.C. embassy merely a few weeks before, each carrying mysterious messages. The coded information was set up to be exposed in the daily Japanese shortwave news broadcast if an emergency led to the interruption of other regular communication channels. The circulars continued by listing potential types of conflicts with codes that referenced weather characteristics. In case of a conflict with the USSR, they would use the words Kitano Kaze Kumori, or North Wind Cloudy. And in case of danger in the relationship between Japan and the United States, the newscasters would say Higashe no Kaze Ame, or East Wind Rain. The second message corroborated the former, stating that the word to confirm friction or an upcoming attack between Japan and America was higashi, meaning east, and that the message would be said 5 times on television. The circular also ordered the embassy workers to relay the information to other important bases around the world, such as Rio de Janeiro, Mexico City, and San Francisco. Consequently, several stations and the communications post began to closely monitor every daily shortwave broadcast by the Japanese that referred to the weather codes, dubbed the winds code. After picking up a potentially incriminating signal in his Washington office, now Commander Lawrence Safford, the Navy's top crypto analyst, allegedly relayed the message to his superiors. However, there is no record of this action. The information never reached Navy Rear Admiral Husband Edward Kimmel, the commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, and Pearl Harbor was then destroyed. Investigation. After the war ended, a debate over whether the Pearl Harbor attack could have been prevented led to the creation of several congressional committees to find a culprit. Several people gave their testimony before the Army Board in charge of the missing winds code, and the testimonies took on a national scope, with every newspaper's top reporters sent to listen and write on the hearings. According to Safford, the last time he saw the winds message was in the hands of the Navy's code-breaking group called OP-20G. Then, after the events of Pearl Harbor, he and another captain tried to locate the message, to no avail. Around 8 other Army and Navy officers testified that they had also heard of the winds execute message, but some then recanted their statements. What exactly happened to the official winds message paperwork still remains a mystery, and its disappearance has only deepened the skepticism of conspiracy theorists who believe that the Navy or another government agency covered up the blunder. Even 80 years after the Pearl Harbor tragedy, many theorists still maintain that after being notified of the winds message, the Roosevelt administration had 3 full days to assimilate the content and prepare the country for imminent war with Japan. However, nothing was ever done to alert the Pearl Harbor fleet or any other military branch. Since the winds message episode, several authors have published findings of their own investigations, and several different theories have surfaced. On the one hand, numerous writers suggest that the many messages about Japanese ship movements in and out of Pearl Harbor should have been enough to alert the authorities and prevent the attack. However, dozens of similar messages have been transmitted about other bases such as the Philippines, the Panama Canal, and San Diego. Other historians have stated that if the Army and Navy intelligence had had more time to analyze the contents and discard the leads, they might have discovered a pattern that pointed to an attack on Pearl Harbor. Or perhaps there were never any true signals, nor a clear indication of the attack, and there is no single culprit to blame for the lack of information. Some experts blame the misunderstanding of the winds code on Lawrence Safford, whose story about the message did not stand up to cross-examination, and claim that his word is not enough to believe he sent the message. According to the late David P. Mowry of the National Security's Center for Cryptologic History and Robert J. Hanyuk, author of West Wind Clear, Cryptology and the Winds Message Controversy, Safford simply mistook the data, and there was never any clear sign of the attack. Quote, Safford's case was built on mistaken deductions, reconstructed non-existent documents, a mutable version of events, as well as a cast of witnesses that Safford conjured up in his imagination. An unsolved mystery. As many of the events surrounding the Pearl Harbor attack faded into memory, the winds code message controversy remained in the minds of scholars and conspiracy buffs alike. With so much information received and transliterated every day, the group of men that were notified about it did not always agree on what was relevant and what should be discarded. This lack of communication led to controversy over the meaning of the winds messages. After comparing all sides of the argument, experts agree that it is impossible to accurately know what happened, and the events around the winds message continued to be debated. Still, Mowry and Hanyuk concluded that, quote, from a military standpoint, the winds coded message contained no actionable intelligence, either about the Japanese operations in Southeast Asia and absolutely nothing about Pearl Harbor. In reality, the Japanese broadcast the coded phrases long after hostilities began, useless, in fact, to all who might have heard it. There simply was not one shred of actionable intelligence in any of the messages or transmissions that pointed to the attack on Pearl Harbor. Thank you for watching our Dark Seas video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to all our Dark Documentaries channels. Also, let us know your thoughts on the winds code message in the comments below.